The Things We All Carry is a podcast about first responders and their stories surrounding trauma on the job. The intention of this podcast is to raise awareness and share meaningful conversation around a subject often viewed as taboo or simply ignored. Be aware this content may be graphic and it is real. It may not be suitable for children or adults triggered by this subject matter. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Things We All Carry. This is going to be a short intro because once again I'm outside here doing the intro and we've got weather moving in. The wind is starting to pick up and I know rain is on its way in, and I want to get this show packaged and loaded in, and I've cut it a little too close, which is great. That's perfect. That is me in ADHD form. That's my form of ADHD encapsulated. It seems like I'm always waiting to the last second, and I'm learning. I'm starting to learn and starting to make some improvements, and obviously I need to make some more. So, it seems like it's been a busy couple weeks, but not busy, if that makes sense. And sometimes I had to sit back and think, well, is that just because I'm not focused on what I'm doing, or I'm focused in too many directions? And I think that's it. I think I kind of focus in a number of directions, and I can't concentrate on one or two specific directions. That's something I need to work on, and that needs to be a priority for me, because I am dropping a ball on a couple things, and I apologize to people around me and to the audience, because I think that it's affected a couple of things. Last week I dropped 2 episodes. The first episode was part 1 with Jim from Ohio, as I like to say, and then the second episode I dropped on Thursday, and that was with Karen Deppa and Mike Donahue from Pilot Light, and they have a great program about resilience and building resilience. And Jim and I, in episode 123, which was released on Wednesday, talked about resilience and how we need to start teaching it at the recruit level. And that was just another conversation that I've had amongst others in the last couple of weeks about resilience, and how do we reach people before they get to the point where they have to get some therapy or an inpatient program, or they reach for the maladaptive coping mechanisms. And that's really what's been on my mind. How do we do that? How do we start building in that resilience? I talked to another gentleman. He's out in Arizona. He's a fire captain in Phoenix. And his program he does with mindfulness is centered towards first responders, and that I can't wait to have that conversation, because I think mindfulness is a big key. I mean, you start training yourself to acknowledge thoughts and kind of let them flow through you without taking effect or without taking root and changing your mood or changing your reactions. And you kind of just understand that you're this vessel, and these thoughts are just coming and going, and it doesn't have to affect you. There's some tricks and some tools that we can use, but we need to teach it. We need to teach it at that recruit school level, so they can start applying it through their entire career. And the goal here is to make not necessarily longer careers, because I'm still not going to advocate for longer, but healthier careers. And that's what we're trying to get, is a healthier firefighter at the end of their career, a healthier cop at the end of his career or her career, a healthier veteran when they come out of the military. Hell, a healthier trauma nurse. Whatever it is you're doing, that you're experiencing these things, we're trying to give you the tools to do better with the reaction to and the life after these traumas. I've had some fascinating conversations with people just outside of the podcast lately, and they've been I don't say challenging, but they've been engaging. That's the better word. They've been very engaging, and man, I value those conversations so much. Talking to one friend about politics, talking to another friend about addiction, talking to even just having these conversations with random people. Somehow I find myself in these conversations, and I love them, and I want these conversations to continue. I want them to become more in depth and more engaging for everybody. And I heard from Diane Cotter this week, and she has a story that she thinks that I should tell, and this is one that I think might give me a foot into kind of a longer way of telling a story, getting more in depth and spreading it out over numerous episodes and telling a story not just superficially, but like I said, in depth. Get into the meat and bones of what happened and why, and kind of who you letting you make up your mind about um, who may or may not be in the right, who may or may not be in the wrong. And so I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but just to let you know, my brain is ticking, it's moving in a lot of directions, and I'm trying to figure out where to go with some stuff. This week is episode 125, and it's part two with Jim. Jim from Ohio, as I like to say. He probably the only Jim from Ohio, as far as I know. Um, and what we're talking about today is we talk more about his reaction to some of the traumas he had, and some of the kickback he got from a department because of what he was trying to do for his people. And then he discovers that how he expended too much of himself and exhausted himself, and was not only he was unable at that point to not just take care of members, but he couldn't take care of himself. And so we get into that discussion about, so it's a burnout, and that's what it was. And he suffered through some debilitating anxiety and a few other things because of it. So this is part two, and there's going to be three parts. So I got another part in the wings that I'm working on, and that's going to talk about where he goes after he gets some treatment. He does. Jim spent time. It's funny. Jim's one of those guys who has been involved in a lot: cancer, mental health, all kinds of things across the fire service, and he's one of those that never thought he would need to ask for help. And it came to a point where his buddy told him, "Hey, listen, I don't want to add your name to a wall. I don't want to add your name to a memorial tattoo that you have." And so Jim finally broke down, finally admitted he needed help. But the people he turned to help for are people he's worked with. And that's kind of an interesting dichotomy when you say, okay, I need help. You know me pretty well, but how do I go about this? And how do I do this? And what's the best thing for me? And so that's basically what part two is about. It's not a long episode. We're looking at about 35, 40 minutes. So I hope you sit back, enjoy. Let me know what you think. Once again, I'm always asking. I want feedback. I want comments. I want to hear what's on your mind. And I would love to hear directions you might want to see me go in the future with guests or topics or whatever. You guys reach out. Let me know what you think. Have a good week. Be productive. Take care of yourselves. Get outside. Do something for yourself.
The fire service is so much better now about reducing our exposure to carcinogens because we know how just plentiful cancer is. We know our increased risk for that. But nobody's really talked about reducing our exposures to traumatic events. Like there's never been anybody that's like, really, as far as I know, that's really made the statement of like, hey, if you don't need to see shit, don't see shit.
Right.
Like, limit your exposure. Like, the same mentality for cancer should be with all these other EMS traumatic events. Like, if you have to participate, that's your job.
Right.
But if you are not the one calling it, then like, save yourself.
Yeah. So you start to collect these calls, and you take an active role in your department, correct?
Eventually, yeah.
And why do you start to take that role, and explain the roles that you start to take within your department?
Oh, man. So, it also really it really started with the cancer stuff.
Okay.
Is what I would say my extra services, for lack of better terms, that I started doing. And a lot of it was with the union, but even with the department as well. We were learning so much about cancer, and I was part of at that point in time, I was part of the Firefighter Cancer Support Network. So I was doing a lot of stuff throughout Ohio, but also throughout the country. And so that's really my first kind of step into the overall wellness world, was just about occupational cancer. And when I started doing this conference stuff, 7 years ago, my buddy Nick that puts on the conference with me, he's the executive director for Brothers Helping Brothers. His idea for the conference was, I want to do a conference about cancer, and I want to shove behavioral health down their throat because 7 years ago, we weren't really
No,
talking about this stuff.
no.
And I was like, "Okay, whatever, dude," and I basically handled the cancer side of things, and he handled the behavioral health stuff. And as time went on, I just got more and more involved with behavioral health, and I think even doing the podcast stuff, helped out because I was doing a lot of talk about that as well, and it's weird as I'm starting to bring all this stuff in, I'm realizing that I'm starting to have my own problems, and they're mounting, and, um, they just added up and added up and added up and as well, but, there was after my cancer diagnosis is, um is when I was, um, given the opportunity to start a brand new position for the department as the wellness coordinator. And it was during that at that point in time, I was already the health and safety guy for the union. So I was
Okay.
in charge of the peer support as well. So I was definitely now doing a little bit of everything. And that behavioral health part, I should back up and say, like our department was really much more open to that. But it took two guys killing themselves uh before we were finally able to start even discussing this stuff
Right.
and talking about it and tying it. Um, that was unfortunate, but yeah, they had, had two suicides pretty close together. Um, so I ended up being the wellness guy for the department, and I went and I did this survey and with all the members, I took them out of service. I gave them all iPads to do this survey that was anonymous, and I was like, "Just be honest. Just shoot me straight. If I'm ever gonna be able to do anything, I need you to be honest with me."
Right.
And when I got those survey results back, it was absolutely terrifying to see the number of guys or gals that were constantly contemplating suicide. It was terrifying. And so I think a lot of people, when they put me in that position, they were like, "Oh, he's just gonna do a bunch of cancer stuff." I never even got to the cancer stuff.
Yeah.
The behavioral health and the suicide was so alarming, that was what my focus was. So I went directly into trying my best to fix that or at least make that better.
You know, it's
Um,
it's it's ironic because you're there. You think you're going to talk about cancer, which is such a potential killer, but then instead of that killer, you have to focus on the more immediate killer. It's basically what you're triaging what's going to kill you first, right?
yes. And that survey was it was my roadmap. It
Yeah.
it told me exactly what I needed to do. And that was my guide for when I was in that position. And it was the focus definitely was suicide prevention, behavioral health, and really the third part was sleep
Yeah.
because everybody was struggling
Jesus.
with sleep. And that,
Yeah.
at that time, just like a lot of places out here, I know we're not, you know, special. There's not enough of us. And so we were being ordered in and like that is never good. We're
No.
physically tired, we're mentally tired. When you're supposed to go to your son's birthday party and you're mandoed in, um, I mean, that causes problems at home,
Yeah. Not only are
and
you
it just
tired, but you're just pissed off and tired, and your
yeah,
wife is
so
pissed, and your son is disappointed, and yeah, that fucking snowball just grows.
it was difficult trying to do anything and everything to better my members' lives at work and at home and do it with really no budget. That was
Mm.
the other thing too.
Yeah.
That always made it fun. But I feel like I was kind of making good headway until kind of had the rug pulled out from under me.
Yeah, I guess describe that. What rug and who did this and what was the why behind it?
Man, so we had a again, basically my job in my role, and it's not like there was a a job description that said this, but like in my head, my role was to make sure nobody else killed themselves. That was it. That was everything that I was
Mm.
put on my shoulders to accomplish. And we had a near miss suicide while I was in that position, and we got really, really lucky, really fortunate. And I mean, just kind of summarize it. It seemed like I kind of got blamed for it, which it is utterly, I realize, ridiculous. But um, I was told that I was. I still can't believe that this was said, but that I was doing too much for the members regarding behavioral health. I
Too
mean, this
much,
is
huh?
too
That's
much.
okay.
I was doing too much. I'm trying to remember the actual word that they used. It wasn't engrossing, but it was along those lines that it was just too much. And this is, we're dealing with a department that just had 2 suicides and then just had a near miss with a really beloved member. And I'm being told that I'm doing too much I'm thinking, "I'm not doing enough. Like, I need
Exactly.
help."
Yeah.
Like, and I really got kinda gaslit and, you know, I had written beforehand, I'd written a policy, and not a lot of places, but there's some places out there that have essentially critical call policies that
Mhm.
if they have, your pediatric or just something screwed up, out of the norm, that, there's intervention set aside to where you can talk to a clinician, you can talk to peer support, or maybe even go home. And that
Yeah.
policy was written, it was on their desk, and they did nothing with it still to this day. And I think that would have helped this member, um, prevent some of this stuff if we would have had
Yeah.
that in place. But again, what can I do? But I ended up getting threatened. Because I had to again, it was a weird, and I knew that it was gonna be a problem. The fact that I was the department's wellness coordinator, so I was part of management, but I was also the union's health and safety guy and peer support coordinator. So I was like a walking, I don't wanna say contradiction because most of the arguments I had, I could have with myself.
Right.
So, but I knew, like, when you're the union guy, you do have a little bit of freedom of speech, not so much when you're the management guy.
No.
And it got really confusing of like which role am I actually operating under? But I got threatened. There was one point in time where I said, if we can't work this stuff out, I'm gonna have to get the union involved. And I was told, well, that's a good way for you to end up back in the street. Which was, like, "You get the union involved, we're kicking you out of this position, go fuck yourself." And that actually I got that threat twice, and, and sure as shit, they told me they were moving me back out to the street, and that's when, um, really all the wheels fell off. I was already at that point in turmoil, and I was really faking it.
Yeah.
I felt, um I had a lot of shame and guilt, and I was at that point in particular, I was already having the voices, I was having ideation, um, but I was wearing this armor, like, and
Yeah.
I was acting my ass off like I was okay because, again, everybody's supposed to come to me for help. So how does it look when the guy that's supposed to help everybody else actually needs help? And I know now how ridiculous that sounds, and I should have stepped up and spoke up and followed my own advice, but I didn't then.
Right.
And, when they told me they were moving me back out, and I had realized at that point in time that that job, that was my purpose, that had become my identity. I knew how bad off my members were, and I think I knew that I was really helping. I had saved in that point in time, I had saved marriages. I know I'd saved life too. Like, I was making an impact, and I really felt like if I'm not here doing this, who else is gonna do it? And, I was more worried about my members than me. And, I finally, at that point in time, I had, a good friend of mine who just saw through my bullshit.
Yeah.
And, I know you saw the book, so you saw my tattoo. I've got a tattoo of, the IFF, um, wall in Colorado Springs, the memorial,
Hmm.
and it's got a bunch of, all my dead firefighter friends on there. And I had this guy tell me, he said, and this cut me so deep. He said, "I feel like we're gonna end up adding your name
Mm.
to your leg." And, I mean, that he called me out on it. He saw through my bullshit, and, I broke the hell down. Ugly crying, nasty, and I left work, and I told my captain there, I just texted and said, "I'm leaving, and I'm not coming back." And I really I kinda didn't. Did, but I didn't. And a week and a half later is when I finally really broke down and finally, picked up the phone and dialed the same number that I dialed for like 5 or 6 other people,
Mm.
but this time it was for myself to go to the Center of Excellence in Maryland. And, I called on a Friday night. I was supposed to see Chris Stapleton that night, and did not get to see him. Instead, I was on a plane the very next day at lunchtime to go there.
Hey guys, quick break right here just to check in and thank each of you for listening to the show. Your support has been paramount, and I appreciate all of you. I have one request, though. I need you to share the show with everyone you know. Help me get the word out and spread these stories as far and as wide as we can. While you're at it, please leave a review of the show wherever you happen to listen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time to share your story, to talk, or to pass on suggestions. Let's get on with the rest of the show.
So it was
Before you
like
go any further
that.
with that, I want to. There were moments in this that, and I told you, I texted you for a couple of them, but there was one moment in this book. It occurred to me. It's like, oh, we kind of have that same brain where because you were the health and safety, the health and wellness guy for both the union and the department, and you do a podcast where you talk about these things, and I am doing this podcast at this platform that talks about mental health and how to take care of yourself and the things to do and the things not to do. We don't listen to ourselves. We never
Oh,
fucking listen to ourselves. I can have this platform and go, oh, I see what's going on there, but I don't know. I do recognize it. I don't acknowledge it in myself. And so we're of that same mindset right there where, okay, I get that. I'm I preach it. I don't fucking practice it all the time. And I'm sometimes my own worst enemy because I just pay attention to it.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
and it's weird because
100%.
there's an expectation that you've got it right.
Oh,
There's
well,
this
you
and
check.
I don't know if it's actually an expectation or it's just the expectation I put on people to project onto me.
So you'll love this, like, because I've got this now. I've had a few people now be like, "So you wrote a book, that must mean, you're good to go now, right?"
You're healed.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
You were anointed.
And it's like, look, I'm in a better place. I don't wanna kill myself anymore, but I'm still a work in progress. I'm
Yeah.
just because I was with it enough to co-author a book doesn't mean that my shit's all good, because it's not. I'm still working through stuff. I mean, I kid now, but I don't think it's a joke. I feel like I'm actively, excuse me, working on a sequel as we speak.
Right.
Not on purpose, but I still think I'm doing stuff that will ultimately, hopefully better me, but also hopefully better other people too if I talk about it. Which is this is what this is talking about it.
Right.
Normalizing this stuff because we're actually talking about it, and we're being vulnerable, we're opening up, like, This isn't anything we could have done, hell, 10 years ago.
No, it wasn't not wasn't only not available, it was nowhere near acceptable.
That's right.
And, to this day, in many areas, it's still not acceptable. I see I hate social media, but it's a necessary evil to advertise sometimes, and I see the comments on the posts that I make, and people are like, "Just shut up and fight fire." And like, well, where the hell does that belong in 2024? It doesn't belong in the mental health sphere, so it's just the good news is that that's the outlier more than it is the norm now.
Yeah.
So,
But and the people, here's the other thing. I don't know if you notice this, but a lot of times the people that are anti behavioral health are the ones that are struggling the most.
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah, like I had a lot of pushback from certain individuals that were in, higher positions, and like, and then I'm looking, and I know their story. I know what's going on. I know what they've dealt with. I know the divorces they've had, and it's like, you know, but like this is the guy that needs it the most, and he's
Yeah.
fighting it harder than anybody, and he's fighting, but he's making it difficult for everybody else too.
Yeah, it's if you don't wanna take the help, don't take the help.
That was
I do understand that, but don't stand in the way of others.
that was a hard thing too to deal with. I mean, we are so, everything is rank in the fire service.
Mhm.
Rank, rank, rank. And that's great. But like, you know, I never would go to a battalion chief and tell him this is how you should run your fire. But yet when it came to behavioral health situations, I got overridden all the time.
Right.
It should have been my scene. Not a scene, but it should have been. Like I should have been in charge of handling that stuff. And I did not have that cooperation, and that made things so difficult and made things so much, I think, worse off for my members.
Was rank and ego, unfortunately, and that's exactly what that trumps, you know, common sense.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that there is kind of the fire service in a nutshell.
It's frustrating, but, with all the people that did make things difficult, I was thankful to, with enough time, and time was probably the biggest thing, I was finally able to get to a point in which we could actually talk, sit down and talk and work things out and really squash some stuff and move on and move forward. And I was so thankful to be able to do that because that bitterness, that anger, that was just following me. And
Yeah.
I wanted some closure. I needed to move on. And so that I was thankful to be able to do that. I mean, quite obviously, I just thought it would happen when I was still on the job. Um, and it wasn't for lack of trying while I was on the job to work through things. It just didn't happen. And so, but thankfully it still did. That forgiveness is another thing that um we don't talk a lot about. And it's not just forgiving others, but also even being able to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
And that
Mhm.
that is, well,
It's
yeah,
ironic.
trying to wrap your head around that kind of stuff.
You say that, it's ironic because I got a text message the other day from a former listener or from former guest, and it's become a friend of mine. His name is Curtis, and he's down there in Kentucky. And he it had something to do with you don't realize how much lighter you are until you offload what you're carrying, and that forgiveness is part of that, for like you said, forgiving yourself and forgiving others. Once you're able to do that truthfully, it does make a difference.
Yeah. I remember seeing it done kind of in a visual way. It was actually one of the better classes I had when I was at the Center of Excellence. It was a clinician named Elena there that she had a book bag. It had all pieces of wood, and each piece of wood had, something else on there,
Right.
some kind of trauma, some kind of whatever. And just the visualization of, hey, you guys are carrying this around all the time. How do we actually take this stuff out of our pack so
Right.
we can be lighter and move on?
Or at
Um,
least reorganize enough.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that class was definitely one of the better classes I took there, and it kind of helped me on that path.
So I know you went
But
into the
really,
center. Oh, sorry. Go for it, Bill.
well, I was just gonna say that it just more than anything, it was I needed time.
I know you go into the center of excellence and you go in like, I don't know, in my head, this is the way I see it. You go in like, go, I know how to do this. I'm going to be a fucking all-star. I'm going to knock this out of the park and I'm going to set the record for how soon I get out of here.
1,000%. That is
And
exactly how I felt.
and it does not work out like that for you.
No, not at all. Um, I had known like, I don't even know what his title was, the CEO of the place or whatever, like, I've had discussions with him, like, before I even got there about stuff, just being an IFF member, peer support guy, all that kind of stuff, and sending people there as well. So, yeah, I got there and I really was of the mind space that I could teach these classes, before I got there, and
Yeah.
oh, yeah, and then kinda reality hit in, and, I was there for 40 days, which was a lot longer than I thought I was gonna be. I thought I was gonna be there for a couple weeks, and, the average stay there is 35 days, so I was a little bit extra, but hindsight again, I've realized I should have stayed even longer
Yeah.
because I was not ready, and when I came out, I wasn't ready, and because I wasn't ready, I struggled for months on end, um, because, I mean, that's the nice thing about that place is the amount of classes and education and one-on-one and group stuff, like, it is so much that they're giving you, and, I forget and they told us in the orientation, but it's something like you get a typical stay there, you get, like, 5 years of clinician visits if you just did it, like, once a week in the regular world. Like,
Yeah.
it's like that much, and, so when you cut yourself short and you leave that place early, like, it took a long time to continue to catch up with where I really needed to be. So I basically left that program and then went in a IOP program
Hmm.
and then was still getting regular clinician visits on top of that. Like, it was a lot for a long time, a lot. And, yeah, because I prematurely left, and I think they were just actually ready to get rid of me. The my 'Cause I mean, I was difficult there too. My last week, because every day there feels like Groundhog Day, and,
Mm.
one of the nice things is you can order whatever the hell you want, so you can get Amazon, you can get whatever and get it delivered there, and I mean, they check all the boxes to make sure
Right.
there's nothing in there, but I ordered off the chive, I ordered a Groundhog Day shirt, and my last week there, I would wear it every single day, and I would wash at night, but
Right.
I would wear it every single day to kind of prove my point that it's all the same.
So you do 40 days and I definitely don't want to cheapen your experience at the Center of Excellence, but that's one that you can a lot of people have spoken about how that's formatted, how that's laid out and how the groups and the fire pit and all of it. And I think it's a wonderful experience. But what I want to know is you come back, you start to reintegrate and you've realized that no, you can't do this.
I came back, I was so broken, and I don't want to just say that and just leave it like that. Like, let me give you examples. Like, I had a difficult time leaving the house. My anxiety was through the roof. Um, it was bad, and it was debilitating, and I so I come out and they want you to have a couple of weeks to kinda get back to normal and
Right.
to be integrated again with your family and stuff, and most everybody up until me, when they got out of the center of excellence, they went back to work, and they went back to work full duty, like,
Hmm.
pretty much right away. I did not. I went and I did a 90-day stint on restricted duty, and, oh my god, this is just, like, my department, they just don't they didn't get it. Like, when I put in my request, they said, "Okay," which I knew they would, but then they wanted to put me back at headquarters, which that was my problem, is being around
Right.
those guys, and particularly the one, and I had to get the union involved, to change that location, and I had one chief that did support me, and they hid me away, quite honestly, they hid me away at a with our radio repair building, and,
Right.
it was just a lieutenant and me, and that place is in the middle of it's where all this, city water and, streets maintenance, like, we're the only fire people in that whole area, and so I got hidden there, and this guy, he he babysat me. I mean, quite literally babysat me, for 3 months. And I was going through the IOP stuff and all that other stuff at the time, and I still wasn't ready, and I asked for an extension, and I wasn't given one, so, like, it's like, "Alright, I'm not gonna get cleared to go back to full duty." So I went the disability route and, did the pension stuff, and they, I think the fire department was willing to work with me. I don't think they wanted to abandon me altogether. Um, they knew that I was a pain in the butt, but I still think they thought it was worth it. Um, HR, I imagine. I think when they saw my name on the desk, they were probably simply like, "Fuck this guy," and I don't blame them because I
Yeah.
was, the health safety guy for the union. So, like, you can Google my name and come up in Dane Daily News, and you can see me on the front page blasting them about how they treated us, with our cancer patients. And um, so I'd been a thorn in the city side for a while. So when they had a chance to tell me to go fuck myself, I mean, they probably had cake and balloons and all that kind of shit. So I got put on my own time and um, burn up all my time I had left and just waiting for the process and I kept my mouth shut that whole time because I was so in fear of them somehow even messing with that.
Right.
So I just shut up and like nobody so like hardly anybody there's hardly anybody that knew what had actually transpired and what happened. And that was part of the reason too of where I finally was like, no, I want to write this book because I want people to know what transpired. Because I may be gone, but those other individuals are still there, and I don't
Right.
want them to do it to anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an injustice that's committed multiple times upon you by people, and it just builds up. And you're right. Those people stay behind, and they find other targets, and other people make themselves targets.
So,
If
yeah.
it kind of goes back to that rule following. It's kind of one of the reasons I asked you that question. How does someone who doesn't appreciate rules or doesn't like the rules find their way to the fire service? Because I know for a fact that as someone who is more than willing to question rules and question norms. It's not always an easy go in the fire service.
Yes. You know, what I found, especially at the end that was hard, is just all I was doing, like, my job, I mean, the gist of my job was just to take care of my members.
Right.
That's all I had to worry about. I didn't have to worry about the lovely citizens of Dayton. I just gotta worry about the guys and gals who protected them. And you would think that a lot of the stuff that I would want to do to benefit them, I wouldn't get pushback. I mean, I did. I mean, it was I mean, I would say I had a pretty good honeymoon phase. I really did. And they gave me a really long leash at first, but at the end, I was banging my head against the wall. Because I don't get it. And, I feel like look, I I will tell you, my conscience is clear, like, I know what I fought for, why I fought for it, and I was sincere, and the people that know me know that I stuck my neck out,
Right.
and I, you know, got hurt because of that. Um, but, like, I know it was the right thing to do, and I'm glad I did, and I there's still parts of me that goes, like, "You know how I am." Like, why in the world is any of them surprised at how I would react and do things? Like,
Right.
they've known me for 20 years. Like,
Exactly.
they know w the good about me, and they know the bad about me. Like, none of this stuff was a surprise. None of it. But yet they act like it was. Like, they're shocked. Like, I mean, did they expect me to, just because I'm now 40 hours and I'm at headquarters, all of a sudden now magically walk the line?
Right.
No. Like, I'm an asshole. I'm gonna push buttons. I'm going to push it as far as I can. And especially when it came to my members. Like, I'm going to go to bat for them. And I'm going, especially with my at that time, my false thoughts of freedom of speech with my union, a lesson definitely was learned. Freedom of speech, yeah, you have that, but that doesn't mean you don't have freedom of consequence,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know? But at the same time, I don't take back what I said and how I did it,
Right.
because I know it was what I was doing was pure, it was righteous, um, and I saw that, and I'm still surprised that they couldn't see that either.
It's funny, you're right, and anybody that's followed me for a while, whether here on a different platform I had, would know that I spoke up quite a bit, but I didn't do it, you know, like I was like, "Oh, yeah, I got a freedom of speech, I can say whatever I want." You're right, you can say whatever the fuck you want, but you're also gonna face consequences, and when it came time to face the consequences, okay, when they asked me, "Did you do this?" Yeah, I did it. There's no reason that what pissed me off at that point was the way they did this overblown investigation even after I'd already told them, "Yeah, that was me. I take whatever punishment you wanna give me." They brought in my whole crew to try to sow these seeds of division, and there was no need for that, There was absolutely no need for anything like that, but that was just them being assholes about it, and so
Yeah.
it's the same thing. I put a target on myself. I paid the price because I did it to myself, and I admit that, but they didn't need to involve everything else around it. And for you, I mean, you it wasn't even into that level. It was just that they decided to be dickheads.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
It
yeah.
was like, what I felt like is that they just felt that I was annoying and they wanted to
Mhm.
get rid of me. Like, I was more trouble than it was worth is probably what it was, and let's just throw him back out in the district, and we'll at least get a break. Like, that wouldn't
Right.
have I still would have been on the union stuff, but, I mean, I wouldn't they would have got away from me altogether, but they would at least got away from me after.
So we'll focus back. We you leave center back since you cut They're not going to do it. They hide you away, quote unquote, for a while, and you file for your disability. And when does that come through?
So my last day of work was January 10th. January 10th or 11th. I think 11th actually. And the I was informed of my pension's ruling on June 21st. I ran out of time mid-May, somewhere around mid-May. So I went about a month or so um, without getting any pay. And it's funny. I did get a random out of nowhere check from the city after the union contract was signed, and it was for 31 cents. So
I framed it, right?
I framed that son of a bitch. It's upstairs, and I actually have a little hammer on it. I said, in the case of emergency, break glass. Yeah, so I got a 31-cent check from them.
That's funny.
Their books are still off of that, which is funny.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Things We All Carry. Head over to the website, thethingsweallcarry.com, for show notes, resources, and to sign up for the newsletter. Until next week, take care of yourselves and remember to check in on each other.